bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50-plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go!
EAGLES, Eagles.
And a good morning, Birds fans. Hump Day edition of Birds 365, a football Wednesday for you. We got 2 hours of Eagles conversation coming your way. Two good guests. We'll give you the details on that as well. You got Mac and Mac, John McMullen, and Jody McDonald. And I had a pretty damn good idea where we're going to start the show today, up until I logged in here and saw one of our early streamers bring up a point, ask a question or something, kind of a combination of two. And it's going to redirect me for the beginning of today's show. And it is Eagle related, but it is also Jody McDonald, John McMullen, additional appreciation related. And that is the combination of the National Football League and the WWE. Delano Fever asks a question / makes a statement about getting back into wrestling, watching wrestling for the first time since Bam Bam Bigelow in the 80s. You're due to return to Delano. That does
must be a Jersey Shore guy if it's Bam Bam Bigelow.
Yeah, he says the Neptune conventions are
there we go. That's Bam Bam's wheelhouse,
neck of the woods. John, someone did mention to me yesterday, someone who knows people within the industry, that they wouldn't be surprised if not only Jason, but Travis Kelce was somehow incorporated into the 2 days this weekend at Lincoln Financial Field. We know Jason knows a little bit about the stadium, but WrestleMania 40 is coming to Philadelphia this weekend, and it's basically going to take over the town. There is a long history of NFL players kind of making cameo appearances at major wrestling events, some getting directly involved in major wrestling events. And Jason Kelce doesn't have to sweat about getting hurt in a wrestling match and compromising his NFL career because his NFL career is over. John McMullen, will we see one, two, or neither of the Kelces at WrestleMania this weekend?
By the way, he's already gone through a table as well, a flaming table. So,
correct.
Jason's ready to go. Yeah, I would be shocked if we didn't see him, to be honest. I would be more shocked if we didn't see him. He's been a big part of the buildup. When they come in and announce the city for WrestleMania next year, it's going to be in Minneapolis, by the way. From all indications, when they start, it's sort of like a mini Super Bowl. They announce it ahead of time. They go into the city. They start selling tickets, blah, blah, blah. Jason was a big part of that, carrying around the championship. And, Lane Johnson as well. Lane's actually a bigger wrestling fan. Like, Lane's friends with Steve Austin, and, he's big time in the wrestling. But as you point out, and very good point by you, Jody. Lane still plays, so he can't mess around and get injured. Jason can do what he wants.
Whatever the hell he wants.
I expect to see both of them in some type of, Lane maybe talking on the pregame show, something like that. But he'll be involved. He'll definitely be involved. He'll definitely be there because he just loves the industry. Yeah, Jason, I mean, that's what the WWE does. And Jason and Travis are as hot can be right now. So they try to tap into that. Jason will obviously be there. Travis, you never know because he's got a lot going on with Taylor and all that stuff. So, sometimes timing doesn't work out.
Mhm.
I know they wanted Sylvester Stallone because of Philadelphia and Rocky, but I don't know if the timing's going to work out. I haven't heard yet. But yeah, I'm sure there'll be a ton of surprises, and Lil Wayne, the rapper, he's going to be there. So, I mean, they always have celebrities. Jason's going to be there. It's just a matter of how much he does.
Right. Will he just be up in a luxury box with his shirt off, which been there, done that
Quite
too.
possible.
That
Yeah.
would fit quite well with the WrestleMania theme and what it's all about. And I said this on WIP last night. I meant it when I said it, and I'll say it again here. And for those of you who aren't wrestling fans and look down your nose at wrestling and it's not really a sport. Yeah, duh. We know it's not a sport. It's entertainment. It's entertainment at its finest, according to McDonald and McMullen. But this could actually help the city of Philadelphia get a Super Bowl, because you and I have discussed this before. You have to basically lobby yourself into a position to host the Super Bowl. They have the Super Bowl committee and they do it years in advance. And you basically have to make a pitch as to why hosting a Super Bowl would be a good thing for the NFL in your town. Now, the Eagles have a couple of, and Philadelphia in general, has a couple of hurdles to get over. They play the Super Bowl in February. It's usually very cold here in February. They played exactly one Super Bowl north of the Mason-Dixon line that wasn't played indoors in a dome, and that was when the Giants.
And that's New York, which is kind of different to begin with. And I don't think they look at that and say, "Oh, we want to do that again." That was, if you remember, there was a snowstorm that week, and because I was going up and back, I didn't stay up there, so I took New Jersey Transit up there every single day. There was a snowstorm; it was brutally cold.
But
That week,
day of game,
day of
it
game,
was not bad.
no, day of game, and it turned out to be worse for us because they had this plan. They set up these, because you have so many people, so many media people covering the Super Bowl, and you have what is called auxiliary press that's outside the press box in the stadium, and they had these lights set up at top so everyone would stay warm, these heating lamps. And boy, did they work. From the people I talked to, their computers started to overheat. So it actually turned out to be much warmer than people had projected, and a lot of people who had to sit outside got screwed from a media perspective.
That was surprising because, as you said, the lead up was, this is what we feared. This is what we feared. The biggest game of the year is going to be played in unruly conditions. And then the actual day game, it wasn't that bad. And I don't think they'd hold Philadelphia accountable just because of what happened that one Sunday at MetLife Stadium. But don't kid yourself. It's part of it. It's part of the evaluation. So Philadelphia is going to have to get over some hurdles if they ever want to host it. See if you agree with this or not, John. And this will be unfortunate for guys of your and my age. I don't think that Philadelphia will get serious consideration if and or till when they build a new stadium.
Yeah, I agree.
Then there's the possibility of a dome being on it. That's a whole nother thing. Hopefully we're still doing Birds 365 when the rumors start about what would happen and where they're building, whatever. That'll give us shows forever as to whether there should or shouldn't be a dome here in Philadelphia. But assuming there's not a dome, that's the only way there will not be, my prediction, there will not be a Super Bowl here at Lincoln Financial Field. Agree?
Yeah, unfortunately, I agree with that. I think you're right. And when you see some of these new stadiums I've talked about, Dallas, Atlanta, Minnesota, some of the newer set, Los Angeles, obviously, which they spent $6 billion on. They're beautiful. And even though Lincoln Financial Field is nice, certainly very nice when compared to Veterans Stadium, but it pales in comparison. So it's going to be, and then, but Lincoln Financial Field is better than Tampa, Raymond James or whatever the hell they call it. I think it's still Raymond James.
Tampa's in
But
Tampa.
Tampa's Tampa. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Those New Orleans is a dump. I mean, I'm sorry, the Super Bowl's a dump, but it's Superdome. But it's New Orleans. I mean, so they'll go to southern cities, in the case of New Orleans, a party city and all that kind of stuff. Tampa as well. But yeah, and if you're a northern city, yeah, you need a dome or you need the cachet of New York City, which, Philadelphia's the little brother there.
And a big cachet has always been new stadium. And oh, by the way, I was going to bring this up later in the show. We can touch on it real quickly here. They've got another stadium issue in the National Football League. A bill did not pass in the city/county where Kansas City is, and the Chiefs were looking for reparations to be able to put a lot of money into their current stadium, refurbish, reconstruct, and it did not pass muster, did not pass with the voters. So now the threats of moving the Kansas City Chiefs will begin, because they were hoping to just get through the procedure and be able to do it and get some government/tax assistance. Didn't happen. This always just annoys the snot out of me, John. And I know it's business. It's kind of like Hassan Reddick being traded. Hey, it's just business. It is and it isn't. And the fact that you have to threaten to move your team because you didn't get the government assistance you were looking at. The two-time defending Kansas City Chiefs have some stuff they got to work out during this offseason. And this will be a long playing conversation that will go on for years. But it just winning Super Bowl doesn't guarantee anything. Didn't give them the tax break they were looking for in Kansas City.
No, I mean, politicians, they're worried about getting reelected. So, if their constituency is about, fiscal responsibility or things like that, there's a lot of things that factor into it. We're going to go through the same thing here in the coming years. Already started with the Sixers, who want to get out of Wells Fargo Center, lower level than the NFL, but still pretty big, the NBA. And, you have this feud almost. They want a Center City arena, and, people are losing their minds and what it would do to traffic and the parking and this and that. And no, stay at the sports complex. And then you have other people say the sports complex is cookie cutter, and you have all the team. You need something downtown. You need to revitalize downtown. You need to help. It's annoying. But at the end of the day, you hope you don't lose a professional sports team, because and many cities have gone down that route. And then they blame the Stan Kroenkes of the world and the Art Modells of the world. If you want to go way back, think about the Cleveland Browns because of their history and their love in Cleveland. And Art Modell was painted as this giant villain. They ended up paying more for the new version of the Browns that would have keep the tradition alive. And it's just the way of the world.
And they're going to have to deal with it in Kansas City, even though they're the two-time defending champions. Money is money, deals are deals, work is work. Yeah, you don't just get free passes for stuff like that. So the Chiefs have stuff they have to deal with. And I don't think I've ever asked you this question. We'll get Gil's opinion on this. How many more years do you think Lincoln Financial Field has? Because no matter how great a stadium is, you just sung the praises of a couple of stadiums like the one in LA that is state-of-the-art, best of the business, the whole thing. At some point, that's going to become a thing of the past, too. You don't build stadiums for 200 years. The Coliseum's the only one that's still standing of that length or nature. How long do you think Lincoln Financial Field?
Well, they have 8. Jeffrey Lurie talked about this at the owners' meetings. At the very end, he got asked about there's this new development plan. Certainly, nothing has started yet at the sports complex, and they've been talking about this for years. Before they built Xfinity Live, they had this big plan to build hotels, and they have live casino, but hotels that connected to Wells Fargo Center. There was going to be a walkway, and where the old Spectrum was, now Xfinity Live. There was all this talk. All they got done was Xfinity Live. Now they're talking again They're going to build up a whole shopping district and restaurants and all this down in the sports complex. And the Phillies and Flyers are sort of getting together, trying to get that plan together. Jeffrey was asked about it for the Eagles. The Eagles, of course, run the world here in this part, and they're not involved yet. And he said we have 8 or 9 years, is what he said, left on the lease, and we're monitoring the situation. So that 8 or 9 years, whether it's in about 10 years, you're going to hear a lot of stadium talk, lot of stadium talk.
Yeah, even though it seems like just yesterday that Lincoln Financial Field opens its doors, the years go by pretty damn quick. And before you know it, you are looking at, the stadium's 30 years old. We got to be thinking about building a new one. It comes up pretty fast. And then if Birds 365 is still here, we'll be talking about should they or will they put a dome on top of a stadium here in Philadelphia.
By the way, we talk about the Eagles and Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson. The Eagles are part of WrestleMania. I mean, the Eagles essentially run Lincoln Financial Field. So when you see anything there, Taylor Swift, a soccer game, when Argentina's there, WrestleMania, the Eagles are a part of it. The Eagles sort of help them run the event, sort of help them run the stadium. Anthony Bonagura is one of their PR people. He's in charge of sort of everything from that perspective. So they're a part of it. They're, when WWE came in to announce they were at Lincoln Financial Field, they were at the NovaCare complex. They, the belt was there and everything was there. The Eagles are a big part of it. So it's kind of easy to get that influx for WWE. They got to work out deals with most celebrities. They know they're going to have Eagles help.
And it will be, they will be part of it. The question is, how big a part of it this upcoming weekend? All right, we're going to put WWE aside, get back to the Birds. Mike Gill's going to jump on with us. We haven't talked to Gill since the Hassan Reddick trade came down. I surely want to get his thoughts on that. Whole bunch of Eagles topics we'll run by our guy from down the shore. Mike Gill joins us next here on Birds 365.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services. The first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Appreciate you streaming in here on Bird 365. McMullen, McDonald, and our guy from down the shore, Mike Gill, who's Mr. College T-shirt, and he's going local on us here. That almost doesn't count. If you don't have to drive for more than 2 hours, it doesn't count for me. And I know depending on short traffic, and when you leave,
it could be depending time of day, time of year, all factors in. Penn counts. I'd say
you gonna give him the nod for Penn. That's like a
Jody. I work in radio. How much traveling do you think I can do?
Mr. Coach of the Year, you're all the way up and down the Eastern Seaboard. What the hell? What do you think? We forget when you brag about where you've taken your team over the last several years?
It's college basketball. You know, the NIT last night. I'm watching Larry Bird's alma mater, Seton Hall, NIT finals. It made me feel nostalgia.
Wait. Time out, Coach Gill. The Phillies are on last night. The Sixers are on last night, and you're watching the NIT?
Nah, I just saw him watching the highlights in front of me.
Oh, that's what I thought. Yeah, try and pull one over on me. You're not going to sneak the fastball by me, Gil. It's not going to happen.
Who was the Tony Price? I think was when Penn made the big run. Is that right, Jody? You remember Tony Price?
Tony Price? No. Why? I don't know where you're coming up with Tony Price.
When Penn made a run, I believe they made the Final Four. So we're going way back.
Yeah, you're predating me, and I'm old. That's not good.
That's just knowledge. That's not obviously. I don't remember it that well. Now I got to look it up.
1979. Tony Price took them.
Yes.
To the Final
Bingo.
Four.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
That I can actually say I don't recall it happening and or
by the way, this 79 Final Four, is that not Bird and Magic?
No.
Everything's conflated to me now.
Yeah, no, you might be right, because it was the 80 final the next year when Magic was a rookie. So yeah, I think you're right. I think you have the exact year. Good on you, Mike Gill. All right, forget college basketball. Let's put college basketball aside.
Yeah.
Although, by the way, if you want to talk college basketball, did you see the numbers that Iowa and LSU did? The highest rated basketball men or women's broadcast ever on the history, ESPN. 12 and change. Holy mackerel. Good for Caitlin Clark. I hope she has nothing but success.
They should have lost to West Virginia, by the way. They got hosed in that game.
Did they? How good is West Virginia? I don't know.
The game was tied with like a minute and a half left, and then the refs just decided that anything was a foul.
Okay. He is a Mountaineer through and through. Can't get over.
Don't ask me. Ask Dame Lillard.
What does Dame Lillard have to do with Iowa?
He tweeted about how bad the refs were.
Everybody tweets about how bad the refs are. I mean, I can't. Everybody. Go on any NBA game. The Sixers play, Mike. You're a Sixers guy. I mean, if you follow a Sixers,
no ties to either school. He was just a viewer.
I know, but everybody's like we get it. All right, move on. Either overcome it or don't.
The game was close. West Virginia was tied with about a minute and a half left, and then the free throws were 35 for Iowa, 5 for West Virginia.
Wow.
Yeah, well, that's because West Virginia plays dirty basketball, but we won't get into that. All right, Mike Gill, we didn't have you on last week until before the Hassan Reddick trade. It came down on Friday, your typical news dump Friday for the Eagles and the Jets to announce the Hassan Reddick trade. We've had some good debate here as to whether it's a win or a loss. And again, let me put on record, judging it now is not fair. You have to wait years before you come up with an actual evaluation of whether a trader's a win or a loss. But we do it all the time. We evaluate it immediately. Is this a win or a loss trade for the Philadelphia Eagles?
Yeah, this is like the Michael Carter Williams trade, right? The pick just kept getting pushed back and back and back. I can't look at it on the surface and say that it's a win if you're not getting a pick for 2 years down the road. Now, 2 years from now, we might look back and say, oh, they have a second-round pick if it gets to a second-round pick. 67.5% of the snaps, which the Jets can control, obviously.
Yeah.
And 10 sacks. That's based on the player. It's just frustrating because you have a player, and this is business. I heard you talking about this, about the stadiums and the Reddick trade, kind of mixing them. It's business. And the Eagles didn't want to pay a player who was reaching an age that they feel that a decline is coming. So I understand that. So you have a player that doesn't want to be here and essentially...
Hold on. Make sure I choose your words correctly here. He wants to get paid here. Hassan Reddick has never said he doesn't want to be here. If anything, Hassan Reddick is on the record saying he wanted to be here and he wanted to stay here, but he wanted to do so at his price.
That's accurate, right. He doesn't want to be here at the price he's currently getting paid.
Right.
The deal is frustrating because the fruits of the labor are 2 years down the road. And even if he connects and gets those benchmarks, you're getting a second-round pick 2 years from now. I feel like it was one of those, like you're wondering, okay, if they waited till draft day, if they waited till training camp, was Reddick just not going to play? Was he just not going to show up? Because by a lot of accounts, he was a very, loyal, nice guy. That's just not his style. Would he just have held out? And could the Eagles have waited until camp? Maybe somebody gets hurt. Maybe something happens. Why they pulled the trigger on a random Friday and got a pick 2 years down the road just feels like a loss on the surface right away for me.
By the way, I'm glad you brought up the Michael Carter Williams trade. I have a lot of bitterness to that trade because I got retweet Armageddon about telling people, be careful. Drew Holiday's a pretty good player and he might develop down the road. I'm taking a victory lap on that one. I am spiking the football. Drew is still around, baby. And he's done a lot of good things in his career. But yeah, I do think people get caught up in the moment. And I kind of explained to Jody, I loved Rich Cimini's explanation of the trade. And it's basically, from the Jets perspective, he's the Jets ESPN reporter. It might be a home run in 2024. It's going to look like a broken bat single in 2026, maybe if you're lucky. For the Eagles, it might be the opposite. Might look like a broken back single right now. Well, you don't have to pay him $20 million. You get Price up on the field. You get Nolan Smith on the field. They want to get younger. They want to get more cost effective. And then by 2026, if they get a good player, even if it's third round, second round, whatever you add to it, it might look a lot better down the road. But yeah, in the immediacy of it, I get why people are upset.
Well, and John, the day they signed Huff, my reaction to that was, okay, you got a younger player at a position where the older guy wanted the money. You decided to go to pay the younger guy. Totally understand that. Here's the problem. Like Huff has a lot now on his plate. He's got to be as good, if not better, than Reddick was for this defense to be better. Reddick's been a very good player. 2 years ago, he was an excellent player. And last year, he was very good. I know the numbers say that he took a drop, but he was a pretty solid player after that thumb injury went away. But Bryce Huff is going to have to be as good, if not better, than Reddick. And I think that's a lot to ask. Now, that doesn't mean if you just paid Reddick that he was going to be as good as he was. So you're taking a shot here that you got a younger player, paid the younger player, and they're going to get more from that. So it's the risk worth taking. But look, this is Howie's season. You anticipate winning every trade, and on the surface, it doesn't seem that trade made this team better, which is how I think we're looking at it, right? We're not worried about what the team's going to look like in 2026 on Bird Street.
Well, I am. No, I get, because I try to look at the whole thing, and I try to look at it from the GM's perspective. I think this is a perfect example of why Howie can take advantage of other GMs, because Joe Douglas doesn't give a shit about 2026, because Joe Douglas can't give a shit about 2026, because if he doesn't win right now, he's not going to be around in 2026.
Right.
Jody and I have talked about this many times. I bring it up many times. The fact that Howie knows he has this leash, he can do smart, common sense things that other GMs can't do. And he's taking advantage of other GMs. And he says, look, and I'll be the first one to say it. I said, he's not getting a second round pick. We always joke, and it was Thomas Dimitrov who told me how he always asked for a second round pick. Second round pick. What do you want? Second round pick. Second round pick. And he wasn't getting a second round pick for Hassan Reddick. We saw it with L'Jarius Sneed. We saw it with Brian Burns. Brian
Well,
Burns.
and the value is in the age. That's what this is telling you. Brian Burns is a 26-year-old guy. Not any better than Reddick. I mean, you could say they're comparable type of players, but there's a gap in age, and there's the value. One team values Burns because they have him at a younger age for longer, whereas the Jets getting Reddick are saying we're going for it in 2024. Whatever happens down the road.
But what I'm saying, so Howie says, all right, I can't get my second round pick. Can I get it in 2025? I can't get it. Can I get it in 2026? Maybe I can get it in 26. Maybe not. Maybe he can. But also, that's probably post Aaron Rodgers, New York Jets. Probably not a very good football team. So it's going to elevate the pick mainly from the bottom of the third round or the bottom of the second round to the top of the second round or the top of the third round. If you look at it from the long term, and I get it, everybody's like, well, the Eagles got to be all in.
Yes. The Eagles have to be all in. Right here, right now, 2024, the Eagles should be all in. The way they built the roster, the way that Howie Roseman has built this roster, they are Super Bowl or bust this season. Except for this trade, which we're worried about 2 years down the road. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up.
There's no such thing. And you brought up Les Snead the other day because F them picks became a big thing. I'm surprised Mike Gill doesn't have an F them picks t-shirt because that's a great t-shirt. And the Rams went all in and they won the Super Bowl and everybody's the Rams didn't go all in at every position. They didn't play all veteran players. They were playing Nick Harris at safety and Taylor Rapp at safety. Young guys throwing them out there. You can't do it at every position. So the assumption of all in means
I'm talking about Hassan Reddick, one of the best pass rushers in the National Football League. You're going to compare him to a backup safety?
No.
We have to stay focused on the individual we're talking about. There are generalities and overall looks. And then there's the individual, the level of the player we're talking about. And Hassan Reddick is the level of the player we're talking about.
What I'm saying
is one of the best
the comparison is not about the player. The comparison.
Well, it should be.
Well, because you want it to be, but what
because it's a fact. We're talking about Hassan Reddick being traded. We're not talking about anybody else being traded. We're talking about one player.
We had this discussion
in a transaction.
It was Jody. It was my premise. It's not your premise. My premise is when people say everybody's all in, they say, "Oh, you got to do this. You got to be all in with every decision. Every decision. If you're all in, you're all in." I'm saying that's bullshit. That's my premise. No team in the history of football has ever been all in at every position at one time because it's not possible to do that. So what the Eagles said, we don't want to pay this guy $20+ million. They have Bryce Huff, who they already agreed to pay. They have Nolan Smith, who you can say shouldn't be on the field, but they want him on the field. And they have these players. My premise is not about Hassan Reddick. It's about the all-in sentiment. And you got to be all in at every position, every decision, every time. I'm saying that does not exist. It never has.
John, let me ask you then. They clear out Reddick now. Does that mean, okay, now they have the flexibility to
they could
be more all in at another spot?
Could, yeah. And it already has. They brought in Bryce Huff, a younger player at that position. May not work. That's about evaluation. That part, I mean, the evaluation might not work, but they already have a younger player that they think is ascending versus descending.
Well, I mean, can they
at a slightly lower cost?
Safety? Can they look to bring in another linebacker or safety or even a nickel corner?
Well, they could do a lot of things. It more likely on the
but
trade
because of this trade.
It helps a little bit, but they could have done that
No, it doesn't.
before.
It's a wash. They didn't pick up any cap room by this. There's as much dead cap money as the money they're saving on Reddick. The only one who saves is Jeff Lurie.
No, well, from the perspective of they pick up 1.3 or whatever it is salary cap in the immediate moment.
As a matter of fact, John,
it's not helping. It's not helping Jeffrey Lurie's already outlaid the money he guaranteed to Hassan Reddick. It doesn't help Jeffrey Lurie a little bit. This is a decision. This is a strategical decision to move on from Hassan Reddick because they want to build a roster the way they want to build a roster. You don't want three, as I said. They were going to pay 2 edge rushers, 2 of the 3. Once they got Bryce Huff, 2 of the 3. And then they worked out a deal with Josh Sweat before they worked out a deal with Hassan Reddick. In theory, if they worked out a deal with Hassan Reddick that was acceptable to both sides, Josh Sweat would probably be out of here. That's the way it works. That's the way it worked at cornerback last year. So
if Reddick was willing to take less, he wanted more.
Exactly.
And Sweat took the less, therefore they kept him and shipped out the other guy.
And I don't think it's even about necessarily less. They were, Josh didn't have nearly as much leverage as Hassan Reddick. I think they might have signed Hassan Reddick for another, not an extension, but they would have reworked the final year of his deal to the point that they would have given him all his money up front. They probably would have spiked him up to 18 or 19 million. And if that would have been acceptable to him, because I don't think he would have played for less than Bryce Huff, and I don't think he should play for less than Bryce Huff on the Philadelphia Eagles, to be perfectly honest. I understand that from Hassan's perspective. I think Hassan wanted more than that. It's understandable. There's 2 guys in this league that have had double-digit sacks, 4+ seasons. I understand why he thinks he's worth what he thinks he's worth, but the Eagles don't. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
So, Michael, here's my question for you. If the Eagles come up short this year, make the playoffs, maybe they win the division, maybe they lose at Lincoln Financial Field, maybe they go wild card again. If they get picked off in the playoffs, first and or second round, don't make it to an NFC Championships game, does Howie Roseman say in the post-press conference, yeah, but I got the Jets second round pick in 2026?
Well, I don't think he comes out and says that.
He's smart to say it, but
I'm sure I agree that I think he feels like, hey, that was a win for me to get what I got for a guy that we had no intentions of paying the money that he wanted. And we don't want an unhappy player around here. So I feel like in Howie's mind, he got a win. That he got what he asked for, potentially a second round pick. Is he okay if it's a third round pick in 2 years from now when Reddick is? Because then you're looking at a Reddick player who's probably a declined player, and then on the surface say, man, we got a draft pick in this draft for a guy who's barely on the field anymore to that extent. So yeah, the general manager certainly thinks differently than the fans do. Right? I mean,
or the head coach. I mean, this happened at the scouting combine where, Howie went first at the combine. And he was asked a question about Nolan Smith, about getting him on the field. Yeah, I think it was more broad-based about getting younger players on the field more. And he brought up Nolan Smith and he said, yeah, we have to do a better job of that. And then Nick talked after Howie and basically reversed course and said, my job is to win on game day. And whoever the best option is to win on game day, I'm going to play to win on game day. So, they have different jobs. And I think people don't understand that.
They do, but I think a lot of people put them in concert together a lot, that they're on the same page and that they have streamlined opinions that are coming together from the front office to the coaching. Much, like we talk about a lot in sports, baseball, the front office and the manager, are they on the same page with the lineup and the pitching and how many pitches in this lineup today because this guy's numbers? A lot of people think that the Eagles front office is essentially streamlined down to Nick Sirianni.
You know what, Mike? I brought up Moneyball, the movie. Love the movie. People get sick of me when I bring it up, but I'll bring it up again. In the movie, Billy Beane built the roster. Art Howe in the movie, Philip Seymour Hoffman didn't want to use the roster the way he built it. So what did he do? He traded a player, so he was forced to play the player he wanted played. That's what GMs do sometimes, and I think that's what happened here. I really do. The Eagles want Nolan Smith on the field.
Question. But that's
Nolan Smith better be Hatterberg.
I agree.
Because if he isn't, that's egg all over Howie Roseman's face.
I agree. Nolan Smith better be. I think more pressure on Nolan Smith than even Bryce Huff.
Well, let me ask
Bryce Huff was going to play, whether Reddick was here or not.
Do we think
play a lot?
Do we think Vic Fangio said Reddick's not a fit for me? Go ahead and move him.
That's possible too. That is very possible because he likes those quarter flat defenders that can drop in coverage when he wants to drop them in coverage and be somewhat successful. The obvious Andrew Van Ginkel last year because how he kind of brought him up and saying Zach Bond offers some of those traits. We'll see if that comes to fruition. Vic likes that type of player. I don't necessarily think Hassan's that type of player. I don't know.
Whoa. Time out, Vic Fangio. How's Bryce Huff in that aspect of football? Being able to drop in coverage.
Never been asked to do it, so we'll see.
So let's get rid of one of the best defensive ends for a guy who we're going to say the aspect of the ability to drop in coverage is a key dimension of what the defense coordinator wants to do. Let's replace him with a guy who's never done it, ever. The Jets never asked him to do it. He had one direction, straight ahead to the quarterback. They never dropped him in coverage. So let's remove a guy who's already proven as an all-pro and an MVP level defensive player for someone who's never done it. And on the other side, you got Nolan Smith, who's never done anything in a National Football League. They can't get him on the field. The coach wants to win games, and he's got him nailed to the bench. So let's put those two guys on the edge because Vic Fangio likes dropping his defensive ends in coverage.
Well,
doesn't seem like a winning plan to me.
A lot of this, Jody, as we know, is a lot of projection.
That's what the NFL is.
The Eagles are projecting. The Eagles are projecting that Reddick is going to take a step back, and therefore was worth the risk of moving him to bring in a younger player who showed the potential of being somewhat where Reddick was, getting to the quarterback. I don't know. You want to say chasing sacks, a guy who just not good against the run, wants to get after the quarterback. And the Eagles are watching this and saying, we've got a younger version of that. We're going to take the chance that this player went from 18.5 sacks down the next year and that he's going to take another step back. They have been pretty good at projecting that in their history with guys right around this age. And it pissed off a lot of fans when they let Trey Thomas and Hugh Douglas and Jeremiah Trotter and many others go. But guess what? Those guys couldn't play anymore, and they were right a lot of times. So they're taking that stance again that we have a guy who was very productive here, wants more money, but it would be foolish of us to pay him. Now, it might backfire like Brian Dawkins did. That's only one guy of the group of guys they let go, though.
I don't even think that backfired. I get up. He had one good year in Denver.
Well, but
he was clearly
still had a little gas in the tank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the old adage is better to give up on a player a year early than a year late. Yeah. Sometimes you get a year. Sometimes Hassan Reddick, I think, is going to be great for the Jets for a number of reasons. I think there's still enough in the tank, and I think he's got a great supporting cast. That is a really talented defense. I think that's going to help him out. I think he's going to have a very good year for the New York Jets. And in the short term, it's going to look very bad for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Well, and there's one other thing that I think we have to keep an eye on here. Because the draft, you're at pick 22 and it's still about a month away. I think they have traded up or moved in this draft, 4 out of the last 5 years. Like, it's not inconceivable that there's still another move that we're talking about Friday, April 26th, that we're like, didn't see that coming. That's somewhat surfacing around what's happening right now on that defensive side of the ball. Because I can't imagine, guys, that this defense is a finished product.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's pretty much. I don't think they're getting Simmons. And if you're suggesting a trade up to get a key defensive player, I'll tell you, I think it's much more likely the Eagles trade back than trade up. They don't have a lot of ammunition. They've got 8 picks, which 7 rounds, 8 picks, that's slightly over. 5 of them are in day 3. And what is a 5th round draft pick? How many slots did that move you up in the first round? Not a whole hell of a lot. So I think there's a better chance.
You got future picks.
Yeah, but a lot of times you could use those in a same situation where you get a player who might be a little older and on the end of the deal.
Hold on, I got to ask John a question. Future picks. So you think they're going to trade a future pick?
Not necessarily. I'm saying you never, because I blame myself. I raised my own hand. I said, well, Howie isn't getting a day 2 pick for Hassan Reddick, and I closed the book on that. And he doesn't. He says, well, yeah, I can't get a day 2 pick this year. I can't get it in 20, but I found it in 2026.
2026, right?
I'm saying he has the luxury again of thinking about the future that other guys don't. And he has the ability to pull strings in the future that other GMs don't. And he often takes advantage of what they call that market inefficiency. They think it's a market inefficiency. I think they're right. But until other people practice the patience of Jeffrey Lurie, he can take advantage of that type
so
of
then
thing.
why would, if that's your modus operandi, that this year you're looking big picture, you're looking,
Well,
we
he's always
won't
looking
worry
big
much about today. We'll put just as much emphasis on
it's not.
tomorrow.
It's not this season. It's every season.
Well,
It's
then
a
why would you trade a future pick for a couple of slots to move up this year if it's not about
because
this
if you
season?
love a particular player, he did it last year for Kaylee Ringo in the 4th round. He gave up a future third round pick.
We're talking about the first round pick. Mike
Yeah,
was
but-
saying
but-
another
but-
major addition to the defense. I'm not going to
No, well,
consider
I
it. Move
say
up
they
4
have
slots
to-
in the 4th round as a major addition.
He gave up a future pick to move up to the top of the 4th round because he liked the player so much and he saw value in that particular player more than a 2024 third round pick in his estimation. He can do stuff like that. He has the luxury to. It might not work out. I think Kaylee Ringo's got a very high upside. But, we'll see how it unfolds over the years. I get it. It's not just about the first round. It's not just about this year. He doesn't change his philosophy from year to year. It's always about the bigger picture. It's always about more than 1 year. Now, in the modern NFL, you can't go out 4 or 5 years. For him, it's 2, 3 years. And it's always about the mosaic. It's not about one move. It's not about this move or this move. It's the whole thing. And he's got crap in his mind that none of us know. And yeah, it all factors in. Like people are talking about James Bradbury. Why is James Bradbury here? Because he doesn't have a replacement yet. If he has a replacement post June 1st, you're not going to see James Bradbury.
Did you watch the stuff that was on with the GM from the Cardinals yesterday? Did you see any of that?
No.
Austin Fort. There was a little video that they did of him.
Oh, yeah, I saw. Yeah.
And he's just, he's on the phone, and I'm thinking, this is the guy from the Cardinals who he may be a good GM, he might not be. I said, he's got one phone, he's making a call. I said, Roseman's probably got like 8 phones out on that day, all of them on speakerphone at the same time, going right down the line. Here's this one guy. Hey, bud, what's up? I'm thinking, this guy's no wonder he's getting circles run around. And they're acting like this guy had made the greatest trade of all time last year. And I'm like, this seemed pretty basic. Like on a draft night, it seemed very calm, very slow. And I'm looking at what you envision's going on in that draft room with a guy like Roseman, who's just moving up. And the trade that he was trying to make seems similar to what the Eagles tried to do. He went from to 12. He was trying to get back up to 6, remember? And he's trying to make all the phone calls. But I'm envisioning Roseman just heckling these people on the phone constantly. Just like, hey, bud, what do you got?
I don't know if he's got.
You got a 2nd round pick?
I don't know if he's got 8 phones, but the key to it is the preparation, because
Right.
you know the players. You have the players you have targeted for a specific pick. In the case of Devontae
But the
Smith,
numbers too, the numbers of what picks they have and what numbers and where they are in each round.
and that's where the prep comes in, because all right, we got 4 players we want at 12, and when the third one came off the board, and Devontae Smith is the last one, and you see the New York Giants sitting there, and the New York Giants are taking Devontae Smith, bang, you got to act, or you got to try to act. And that's what he did. And he moved ahead of them to get Devontae Smith. Worked out for both the Dallas Cowboys. Interestingly, it was all NFC East teams. Worked out tremendously for Dallas as well, because they got the drop down, still got Micah Parsons. Eagles got Devontae Smith. The poor Giants, they're floundering. They don't know what to do at 11. They trade back, ultimately draft Kadarius Toney, which was a disaster. So it's usually it's about preparation.
Well, with all that, guys, I don't know if you saw this, but yesterday, so the odds for the NFC East, no team has repeated in 20 years. And the Eagles and the Cowboys are tied at plus 150 as the favorites. The Commanders and the Giants are both plus 900. They're telling you that the Eagles are going to win the division again.
And I would suggest that if Hassan Reddick was still on the Eagles, they'd actually be the
favorite. Oh, that's what I'm asking you, Joe. So are you saying this will be the first time a team repeats?
No,
Dallas repeats.
No, because Dallas has done nothing. The Eagles could win the division by default. They lost 6 of their last 7, including the playoff game. They could win as many games as they won last year and win the division. Because I think the Cowboys are going backwards. It's more a statement about the Cowboys than it is about, the Eagles are going to be improved. I don't know that the Eagles are going to be improved, but they can win the division just because the NFC East. But here's the thing about the NFC East. I think the Commanders could be better. If they get Drake May, I think Drake May is ready to step in and play day one in the National Football League. They take him at number 2, the free agency moves that they made. They were a pretty poor football team last year, coming apart at the seams, coaching, ownership sale, all that stuff. It was basically a dumpster fire all year. At least they got some stability, that out organization. Beating the Commanders twice next year is not going to be easy for the Eagles.
And it hasn't been, even when they've been a dumpster
it hasn't
fire,
been.
right?
Yeah.
I was surprised
here. Ironically, they always beat them down there. Here.
I was surprised too that the Giants and the Commanders were both plus 900. I think Washington is moving in a better direction. Although the Giants have had some sneaky under the radar moves, but I think the quarterback position, plus they got to replace the running back, and they have not a lot of weapons there.
Speaking of odds, I'll leave it there with you at Mike Gill Show. Make sure you listen to Mike on the Sports Bash. If you're local in South Jersey, 2 to 6 drive time every day. Number 1 in the market. Congratulations, as usual, Mike, for that. We all get these draft odds in our mailbox and our email box every day. I got the latest Eagles draft odds. Number 22, it was all cornerback driven. Nate Wiggins plus 225, Kool-Aid McKinstry plus 300, Enos Rakestraw plus 600, Cooper DeJean plus 650. The low non-corner was Chop Robinson at plus 500. The field was plus 450. I'm taking the field.
How many guys did they give you for?
5. 4 corners and Chop Robinson.
5 and/or the field. The field at plus 4. That's a great bet.
Yeah, I would take the field. And
absolutely.
Yeah. I like the kid from Washington, the lineman. How do you say Tutu?
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah, right. But he seems to fit the mold because versatile, can play all 5 positions on the line. He's been a tackle, guard. Has played. Could play some center. Very athletic. He fits what they like on the offensive line. So if he was there, I wouldn't be shocked.
Troy, I'm going to try. Troy Fautanu is my guess.
Fautanu. I saw it phonetically spelled and it didn't make sense, but Troy Fautanu. Washington offensive line, if he's there at 22, I wouldn't be shocked. Very athletic guy, and the Eagles like that versatility that he can play multiple spots on the line. So You gave me draft odds. He wasn't in there. And that's why I would go Field.
Well, I would go Field because, they're looking at corner, and they have a need at corner. And I think they might target a specific player. And for me, that would be Quinyon Mitchell, but you got to go up. And as Jody pointed out, that's easier said than done. And if they can't get a Quinyon Mitchell, I think a lot of people don't know or don't understand. Look, if there's 5 good corners and all those players you can make cases for, you're not going to like all 5. If you like all 5, there's something wrong with your process. They got to fit your scheme. They got to pick what Big Fangio wants. They got to do certain things well. They're all different types of players. You don't just say, oh, there's 5 corners, I'm going to take the best of the 5 corners. You're probably not going to like that player, most NFL teams who do it the right way. And then you got to go in a different direction. So I think that's going to happen. The Eagles need a corner. They might even want a corner more than anything else. I just don't think they'll be able to get the corner they probably want if they sit at 22, and then you got to shift directions.
Well, what position are they going to get the player that they want at 22?
Well, you're never going to get the player you want because you probably want, the best player in the draft, and obviously you're not in a position to get it. I'm saying you're going to have a group like they did with my example with Devontae Smith. They're going to have a group of 4 or 5 players they hope falls to them at 22. That's how you do this. And, some of them are going to come off and they're going to go blah, blah. And if they're all off and you're not able to go up and get one like they did with Devontae, then you start talking about trading back, and you probably have another group of 4 or 5 you're comfortable with at 27 or 20 and do that type of thing. That's the trick, matching up the evaluation with the valuation and yada, yada. That's sort of the trick of it.
And Mike, one thing, if you're going to continue on with the Washington kid as your potential Eagle pick, here's something that always scares me for a player who's got tremendous versatility. There's a possibility that he needs that versatility. I'd rather have a guy who is dominant at one position. He's a center. He's a tackle. He can play center. He can play left guard. He can play right guard. He can play left tackle. Part of that is he hasn't been that good that they go, oh, shit, we can't move him from that position. Yeah. We need to lock his ass in there and not even think about moving him around. Versatility is nice, but sometimes versatility shows non-dominance. So if you're going to go there with him, be careful.
Apparently, Stoutland worked him out at the combine and was very impressed by him. So the fact that he got a good look at him in person. Now, Landon Dickerson was a guy who could play multiple positions on the line, ended up settling in at left guard, but could have been a center, could have been a right guard, probably could have played some. But it just the kind of player that they like. I didn't say that I would be happy with that pick. It just seems that that's the kind of player that, hey, we need a right guard right now. In 2 years, we may need a right tackle if Lane Johnson's not here and he can bounce out and play right tackle. Lane, they drafted, we thought to be the left tackle. He hasn't moved in 12 years now. He's kind of stuck at that spot. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up taking a player like that if they were there at 22. John and I think last week when you were on with me, we were laughing about Mike Tannenbaum had that GM mock draft. We had Brock Bowers. He would be like the Bijan Robinson conversation if he fell.
Well, they need a tight end, but Mike had him fall into 22.
And if he fell at 22, would we be saying, holy crap, they cooked Brock Bowers at number 22?
Oh, yeah, well, I'm taking him at 22. If he falls to 22, he ain't falling to 22. That's why I was laughing at Mike. And I love Mike.
Well, that's what we were saying. We were laughing because we didn't think he would get to that point. But if you're watching the draft that night and here he is, what part of the draft would they say, this guy's here, we got to move up to get him?
Nah, they wouldn't. That's why I think Mike did it the way he did it. They wouldn't move up to get him. But if he's sitting there at 22, how do you think? You got your big draft board and you rank the players all in talent, positions aside, and he's sitting there at number 4. That he's the fourth most talented player in the draft, and he's available at number 22. Sorry, Dallas Goddard, you got company. We're going to run 2 tight ends next year because we're not passing on that kind of talent at 22. Bowers is just too good.
Yeah, people don't like taking tight ends that high, but I can't even imagine a world where he's fallen to 22. I can't even.
I'd
fathom it.
love to see that happen because A, the Eagles would get a good player, and B, it would put some pressure on Howie Roseman. Mike Gill, always a pleasure, my friend. Wear your Penn shirt proudly all day. Look at him.
I will do my best, man. I will do my best to see if I think this thing can start walking off me pretty soon.
There you go. Mike Gill from down the shore.
Thanks, Mike.
On Birds 365. All right. We've been talking plenty about the draft. We're going to do a lot of that in hour number 2 as well. Matt Manion. I hope you recognize the name. He's been on with us previously. Vice President Football Analytics for Sports Info Solutions is going to jump in coming up in just a couple of minutes here. Keep it here on Birds 365.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Mac here with you on Birds 365. Matt Manion from one of the head of analytics for Sports Information Solutions going to join us in just a little bit. We'll continue to talk draft with Matt. The way they do it.
Former NFL scout as well. Cleveland, I believe, and maybe the Saints, I believe. Cleveland, yeah.
And that's why I truly appreciate having Matt on, because he's a very analytically driven guy. The company is analytically driven. It's all about analytics. But he brings that combination of the scouting eye with the crunching of the numbers, which I think is the best way to do it. It just annoys. 2 things that annoy the snot out of me about sports in general and doing sports talk, which is what you and I are doing here. Number 1, the NBA. You either have to be a fan of today's NBA or yesteryear's NBA. Never the two shall meet. You can't possibly appreciate good, hard physicals, 80s NBA basketball, and high-flying, tremendously athletic, skilled three-point shooting in 2024. You got to pick a side. This is the Civil War here, north or south. There's no sitting in the goddamn middle. Pick a side and get on it. No, I choose to sit in the middle. I like them both. And it just bothers the heck out of me. And debate between analytics and a scout's eye. You have to be one or the other. I can tell. I don't need no stinking numbers to be able to tell you who are great players. I can tell you by watching them myself. Shut up. And or here's what the numbers say. And if you go afoul of the numbers, you can't possibly get it right. Wipe off your protractor, buddy. Come on, there's more to it than that. The two divergent opinions.
Yeah. Well, that's why there's a lot of good in analytics, a lot of good, but there's some bad as well. And most of the bad, you talk about the NBA Civil War, most of the bad has to do with the product, because you get a bunch of smart guys who say, hey, you know what? If we just chuck a bunch of threes, percentages say we're going to score more points than if we dump it down to a big man. And it changes the game, and it changes the way the game is played. None more so in baseball. You know, you're a baseball guy. I mean, it changed the game to the point where it's not as aesthetically pleasing, at least in my estimation. Not everybody's. That's up to the individual. Same thing in the NBA. NFL, I think, is a little bit different, because I think most of their issues have to do with the safety dogma and the changes in legislation. So I think it's a little bit different. But yeah, I think the product was more aesthetic in yesteryear. Now, the athletes have never been better. Athletes have never been better in every sport. But, when you're trying to launch home runs because somebody tells you launch angle, I remember Gary Sanchez, because I'm a Yankees guy. As a young player, looked like he was going to be unbelievable. And then they start screwing with the swing, and he's hitting 160 a couple of years later. I'm like, something's wrong there. I mean, something's wrong. All right. Yeah, you hit a couple more home runs, but yeah. So the game itself, then it becomes strikeout or home run. Basketball becomes 3-point shot instead of some of the greatest basketball plays ever. And I think the best basketball play ever, the best, Jody, was Julius Erving's rock the cradle dunk. If you remember, over Michael Cooper, very famous dunk, rock the baby. If that were the modern NBA, everybody'd be veering to the 3-point line as Mo Cheeks and Bobby Jones. Yeah, those great fast breaks and finishes, everybody veers to the 3-point line. It's not as aesthetic. Might be more successful, but it's not as aesthetic from the statistical standpoint.
Unless that Curry is shooting it, then you're right.
Yeah.
Then I'm with you.
Oh, exactly.
That makes everything work.
I'd rather watch the dunk over Michael Cooper being helpless than Steph Curry's gorgeous jump shot, and it is gorgeous. Not as exciting.
And I would agree about the Gary Sanchez point. I was on New York radio 7, 8, 9 years ago, whenever it was, on WFAN. And a caller called in and said, Gary Sanchez is the next Johnny Bench. And I said to him, why do you want to say something so stupid? Why would you do that to Gary Sanchez? He'd been in the big leagues about 6 weeks. He had hit a ton of home runs. And for one of the first players, they had 8 home runs in his first 80 at bats, or some ridiculous number. So that made him the next Johnny Bench. I said, do you realize you're comparing this kid, and that's all he was at the time, a kid, to the greatest position player at his spot in the history of the game? Johnny Bench is the greatest catcher ever. Not just a Hall of Famer. He's the greatest catcher ever. And you want to elevate a guy who's got 80 major league at-bats to being the next Johnny Bench. Why would you do that to him? Why would you do that to yourself and say something so stupid? I'm not stupid. You're stupid.
Well, yeah, that's always unfair when you compare a youngster to as you mentioned, the best position player maybe ever at that particular position. That's always silly. But, he was a darn good hitter for when
A
he
week and a
arrived.
half. That's what he was, a darn good hitter for a week and a half. And he became Gary Sanchez.
Now, I think if you look back, Jody, his, they started screwing with his swing, and he turned from a 280 hitter to 180 in like one season.
I don't buy that.
Now,
where did you get that good inside information? They started screwing with his swing.
Well, I don't cover but how do you turn from a 280 hitter with 30 plus home runs, 90 RBI, not RBIs don't matter anymore. And the next season, you can't find the Mendoza line. Maybe it's just the kid's fault.
Yeah. Six,
but I mean, it's a well-known, I do have from Theo Epstein, who's a pretty valuable source, not about a particular player, but about the game in general, taking responsibility for the less aesthetic version of the game. And this is the guy who stopped. This is a legendary general manager who stopped two curses in the sport of baseball that had gone on for 100 years, basically. And he admitted, you know what? It works, but the game, also part of our responsibility is the entertainment value of the game. And it's not as aesthetic because they're teaching young kids to do different things and go away. Nobody cares about a double. The numbers say you can't get 3 consecutive singles, Jody, or it's far less likely than hitting a home run. So swing for the home run.
Right.
I mean, all this stuff as a baseball
I know,
guy.
and I get the
making
point,
it up.
John. I get the point you're trying to make. I just think you're doing it with the wrong player. Gary Sanchez is not the player to be using to make that point.
You can make it with 100 players. I mean,
right. And
pick
I'm saying
player
Gary
that
Sanchez
you like.
was not one of them. He actually had launch angle when he showed up. That's all he did was hit home runs. The Yankees didn't try and change him into a launch angle type player. No, the reason why he stopped hitting home runs, they caught up to him. And that happens from time to time in professional sports. A guy comes in, you don't really know how to handle him. You don't have a good enough scouting report him. You haven't figured him out yet. And then you figure him out and you find out how to get him out, and the guy can't play. That happens. That has nothing to do with launch angle or the beauty of the game or overall way that you try and play the game. That was just Gary Sanchez wasn't that guy. There are guys who fit the mold you're trying to make. The point you're making is very legitimate. He's just not the guy.
All right. Well, pick one of the other 200 that does.
Right.
It doesn't. Because I don't follow baseball as much, but I follow one particular team. I just brought him up because he looked like he was going to be a star. Not Johnny Bench, but he looked like he was going to be a star. And he was an all-star. And he was a 30 home run guy. And he was hitting 280. And all of a sudden, maybe you're right. Maybe people just caught up to him. But usually when you reach that level, you usually don't fall off a cliff like that. And that was a cliff. You might go from 280 to 240. You might go from 33 home runs to 25 home runs or 20 home runs. And you might go incrementally down. To fall off a cliff like that, and that's why I used him as an example, but you could use 200 and you could use more than that. You could use players. When you and I were younger, Jody, what was the coolest thing about the Sunday paper in the summer?
Oh, the fact that they listed all of the leaders,
every single player,
right.
and Major League Baseball, and you saw that poor 1 or poor 2 guys who couldn't cross the Mendoza line at the bottom of that list in the Sunday paper. Now, how many guys are under 200? It's freaking absurd. What is the reason for that? And for Birds 365, I don't know why I got off on a baseball tangent, but I mean, when you hit under 200, it was an embarrassment. Now it's I'm not going to say it's acceptable, but there's a bunch of guys.
Yes.
Bunch of guys. And there shouldn't be.
And that's where I think your point about the aesthetics of the game has changed and not necessarily for the better. Very true. All right. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDowell. We're hoping to have Matt Manion up next. We've had Matt on before. Great draft guy. His company, Sports Information Solution, does great analytic work with the draft. And Matt tries to meld the scouting eye with the analytics of the draft. We're hoping to get Matt Manion up next with us here on Birds 365. Hey, let me do a solid by you Birds fans out there. How would you like to save some significant money? Here's your chance to save up to 40% on your car insurance right now for one of JAKIB Sports' great partners. Here's what you need to do. Call one of the two managing general partners, either Jim or Fran, and tell them you are a friend of both JAKIB Sports and Birds 365.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Val Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLEX, Eagles.
Mac and Mac with you here on Birds 365. We are counting down to the draft. A little over 3 weeks before they get underway. That means we need a Matt Manion update, one of our favorite draft guys. He does it for Sports Information Solutions, VP of Football Analytics. Matt, how you been, bud? Haven't seen you in a while.
I'm doing good. We're entering the stretch run before the draft, so it's one of the best times of year.
Yeah, it is. Good to see you, Matt. And on the 33rd team, the SIS. So teaming up with those guys who we love as well when you talk about the draft board and things like that. But, I'd like to start every year, and I love to hear from guys like you. And I talk about blue chip players, and Jody knows I've been doing this. Every year in the draft, there's that drop-off point. And it varies from year to year. How many players do you think are true blue chip players, and you have that little fall off in this year's draft?
Yeah, it's funny. There's always people with, is he a true first rounder? How many true first rounders?
That's the phrase they use.
Yeah.
And it annoys the snot out of me.
Chipper, in my opinion, there are 4 true blue chippers for us in our grading scale.
Low number, man.
That's literally how we look at things. I don't know if that's necessarily a low number. When we talk about true top of the draft players, this is why top 5 picks are so valuable. For us, that would be, you're going to enter the league and you're going to be one of the better players at your position immediately, right? You should be a Pro Bowl contender your first year in the league at any position except maybe quarterback, which you give a little bit more of a developmental curve there too. So for us, that's Caleb Williams. He's in that range for us. Our top rated player in the draft is Marvin Harrison Jr., but Malik Neighbors is also in that range for us, and Joe Alt. So those players would be my true blue chippers. Then, I don't know, you want to talk about red chippers or first round grade, however you want to say it. But the guys that we think will be very strong starters, I think then you get to that next level. There's probably about 10 players on that next tier before you start to get into, we're really picking on guys with warts a little bit.
All right, what's the difference between Caleb Williams and the other quarterbacks in this draft? Why is Williams on that first tier and other QBs second at best?
A combination of youth with demonstrated high-level ability with production, right? So you can take somebody like Drake May and you can say, wow, he's got some traits. He's got some traits there, and he's got the youth. The demonstrated production isn't there like it is with Williams, right? We can look at Bo Nix, and we can look at this. What is he? 25 years old. He does not have. Penix. You got to throw him into that same category. There's not having that. So to have Caleb Williams' special athleticism, both in terms of arm talent and in terms of what he can do with his feet, he having demonstrated at the college level the ability to make NFL level throws, and then you're still dealing with somebody who has a lot of upside, a lot of untapped potential that could be there. And that's why you start, when you start to have ideas about, okay, which of these guys could be Mahomes-like, you could talk yourself into it with him a lot more quickly. I think for Drake May, he's my personal number 2, and he's number 2 on the SIS draft site. He's a guy that I would say is more like Justin Herbert as a prospect. Big, strong, has every trait that you would want, but it's not fully put together there on the film. I don't know if it's because of his offense. I don't know if it's because of something innate about him. I was too low on somebody like Herbert when he was coming out because I never liked these traits guys that couldn't put it together. But Drake May, I think he's built in that same sort of image.
The most interesting guy in the class to me, we'll stick at quarterback, then we'll move on because the Eagles aren't taking a quarterback. But that's J.J. McCarthy, because it seems like a lot of NFL teams, from what I hear, love J.J. McCarthy, Matt. But that demonstrated performance, it's just not there. I mean, Jim Harbaugh can talk about what he is and what he is as a player, but the bottom line is he didn't let him do it. And if he's that good, why are you playing the way you're playing? Maybe Jim's just old school, but that scares me when he's not, they have the biggest game of the year and he's not throwing the football. That scares me, Matt.
Yeah. So I agree with you there. And also, if you extrapolate to Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh being together in Los Angeles, I think it's interesting because they got rid of the receivers. They're beefing up. They're clearly going to try to establish something there. I think in that case, you'll see Herbert look even better than he has because he doesn't have to put the whole team on his back. Maybe not in total volume, right? But in terms of efficiency. McCarthy, I think he was put in positions to be efficient. I think they didn't count on him to win the games. I think you're exactly right about the demonstrated production. It's not there. With him, it's purely the youth and it's the traits that people get excited about. the traits to me are not on the same level as a Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, a Drake May. I even think he's probably a half step back from those guys. But, one thing that me and you guys, we're not in the room in the combine meetings with these quarterbacks. And if the way Harbaugh says it's true, and if, what makes me think why people, the more they get to know him, the more they like him, I think it's because he does have the ability to talk through the why of his progressions and talk through the leadership and all that kind of stuff that if you're going to bring in the CEO of your football team, you got to make sure that they have those things. So I think that probably has to do with it too, not the film.
Matt, want to get your opinion on a specific grouping for this upcoming draft. Like John said, we're Birds 365. Eagles in the offensive line. They got some issues. The Eagles' offensive line has been the stalwart of their team for the last several years. It's why they went to a Super Bowl, why they made the playoffs 3 years running. They've got that good an offensive line. But Jason Kelce comes out of the mix. Lane Johnson's getting a little older. They lost a couple of their good backup pieces via free agency this year. All of a sudden, the Eagle offensive line isn't as stalwart as it used to be. John and I are debating on whether they're going to use a first-round pick on an offensive lineman. He thinks more than I do, but I'm not dismissing it. Give me an overall offensive line look at this year's draft. If they don't get him in the first round, how good are the second-round guys going to be? How good is the depth on the offensive line this year if the Eagles are going to be using day 3 picks to fill in some holes? How good a year is it for offensive linemen in the draft?
It's the best offensive line year I can remember.
Wow.
Hands down. The most – listen, we could talk about how offensive linemen get developed and how that's degraded over the years and what you get when, from a rookie lineman compared to what you used to get. But in terms of the quality of the players from the top of the top end all the way through. Now, I agree with you that the Eagles are a little bit weaker on the offensive line, but I think that the way the Eagles think about things is the way that I prefer to think about things, which isn't what are our needs. It's how do we get more offensive linemen and defensive linemen. That's pretty much why the Eagles have been good all this time. And so those happen to align this year. So I think it's a perfect meeting of all that stuff right now. I think the offensive linemen are excellent in the draft. I think that the Eagles have a need there. And I think the Eagles want to draft there generally speaking. That's how they believe in building their football team. So first round, I bet the over. Whatever they're setting it at, bet the over on how many offensive linemen go in the first round. But we could have 10. I'm not kidding. We could have 10 offensive linemen. It wouldn't shock me at all. But then even with that, I think you get into a situation where you could get legitimate starting offensive linemen, guys that you can pencil in as starters, maybe not their first year, but by their second year, you could get those guys on the second day and feel really good about them. And then even on the third day, listen, you're always kind of it's slim pickings at offensive line when you get to day 3. There's a reason there aren't that many 6'6", 300-pound athletic people that are on this planet, right? It's very hard to find these people, whereas you could find the receivers, you could find the running backs. But I think even there, just by the nature of how many offensive linemen there are going to be guys that, oh wow, we had a 3rd round grade on him, and it's the 6th round. Let's take a shot. Yeah, absolutely.
Cornerback as well, Matt, is a potential position the Eagles could look at. More so from my perspective, a targeted trade up for a Quinyon Mitchell. But if you're stuck at 22 and you can't move, that second grouping, I guess, behind Terry and Arnold, maybe in Quinyon Mitchell, maybe not. Maybe you have somebody rated higher. But that second group of corners, if that's the way you have it, how good are they? Are they worthy of that selection?
So based on our scale, we have 4 corners that we think are true starters coming out of this draft. That's McKinstry, Wiggins, Rakestraw, and Mitchell. So Mitchell would reach that.
No Terry and Arnold?
For us, Arnold is in the next tier.
Oh, wow.
We look at Arnold. We look at Cooper DeJean. To me, I think these guys are ideal 3s in the NFL, and I think you could get by with them as your number 2 corner. But I'm a little bit cooler on some of the corner prospects compared to some of these other guys. I think that it's a little bit slim pickings this year at that position.
Give me your read on Racketstraw, because I've seen others have him rated as a guy who's going to go in the first round, second half of the first round, but in the first round. And then I've seen others suggest not even sure he's a second round player, that he could fall all the way to the third. He seems to be one of those guys that opinions vary on him. Why do you like him to put him in that top group of yours?
Because he could cover. At this position, he's small. And you want big, strong, fast players, and I understand all that. He's a bit frail. You're going to have questions about him helping out and run support. But to me, if you could play man coverage the way that this guy can play man coverage, the reactive athleticism, the ability to get in and out of breaks, the ability to just stick on you like white on rice, that's what I like about his game. And we're always coming back to, when we talk about back seven players on defense, this is a passing league. We got to cover. I know you guys probably think with your undersized linebackers, wait, let's make sure we get some support up in there. But really, I think you've got to prioritize the pass game.
Yeah. And the Eagles certainly do. They agree with you there. I want to tap into your previous life, former scout with the Saints and the Browns, and sort of take people into the process, Matt, and the fact that, you know, even something as simple as building the board, you know, there's how many guys drafted? Nobody's draft board is that big. You target a players for the position and you sort of go from there. How do teams do that? Explain that to as best you can to the fans. And the 1 year I've heard, the smallest draft board I ever heard was Bill Belichick. I think he had 75 players 1 year, something. How boiled down does it get when you guys are ready to go on draft day?
You see a few different approaches to it. Where I was in New Orleans with Mickey Loomis, Sean Payton, or when I was in Cleveland, which was kind of like a split of a couple different regimes. Generally it's a year-long process. So just because everybody doesn't make your final board doesn't mean that you didn't do your full process on them. Even if you're not drafting them, you want to have all this information about them in case they become a free agent, they're an opponent, whatever. But you're splitting up the country into usually about 6 regions for your area scouts all year long on the road. Those are your primary reports. Then you get to around December and you start your cross-check season. So at that point, instead of watching all the guys in the Northeast, now I'm watching maybe all of the defensive linemen, or I'm watching all of the wide receivers, so that across the whole country, so that then we can get those stack ranked by position. We come together, we build the board. After the All-Star games, usually in February, that's when you build your board as a scouting staff. That's when I think the board is beautiful and pristine and perfect. And then you have the combine and you have the coaches getting involved and you have the medical staff pulling players down and you have the ownership not being comfortable with this guy's background. And that's how your board can get whittled down pretty quickly. When people say not on your board, sometimes that means you've got a couple big red stickers on the magnet, or as it is now digitally, it's blacked out. But sometimes also that's literally, we don't have that guy accounted for. He's not on our radar. When it gets down to the nitty gritty, I think it's different early in the draft than later. In the first couple rounds, when you can kind of predict and game things out, I think at that point you usually have Coach Payton would call it a cloud. And basically we would have 5 names in a little cloud on the whiteboard. And basically we know that these 10 are going to be gone before we pick. But if any of these 5 are there when it's our turn, we're interested in them. If nobody's in our cloud, we're trading down. If there's only one person in our cloud, it's easy. I remember all the way back when we drafted Cam Jordan. We took him. Mark Ingram was also in our cloud. Before I knew it, we had traded back into the first round to try to get another guy out of our cloud. So that was kind of how that. Later in the draft, it's the 5th round. You might have 3 names that you're comfortable with, and you might be doing more coordinating, like, hey, are we comfortable with this guy if he's here? And you're playing it more like that. If you run out of people, that's when you're looking to move up or move down, because there's nobody that you would have taken at the spot where you would end up going. So I don't know. I hope that answers your question, but it's a loaded one.
It was, and you did a great job of answering it. All right, I'm going to ask you another procedural question. The fact that you guys do a great job of balancing analytics and scouting eye and the like, and you need to be able to do that. The question I'm going to ask you on both ends, trying to compare a player who competed in the SEC against a player who competed in the Sun Belt Conference. That's kind of different football. It's just a different level of football, different quality of football. So you have to put it on a scale. How do you do that? How do you balance that scale? Taking a guy, you see him on a workout, he's got tremendous athletic. Okay, let's go to the numbers. Yeah, but he put the numbers up in the Sun Belt Conference. What is that compare? If he had been playing at Tennessee, it was in the SEC, what would his number really look like? How do you make that work?
Yeah, so from a statistical point of view, the numbers are just production, and you can basically adjust your production based on the expectation, right? If we know that when Power 5 teams play against this team, what we expect them to do, and we can compare you to how you do in those sorts of things. The answer is it's not great, though, right? Because it's very hard to kind of extrapolate that.
Yeah, it is. From
a scouting perspective, the main thing that you're really looking for is if it's a lower level of competition, you've got to jump off the film. The bar for what is good has to be mentally on a totally different tier than it would be otherwise, right? It's one thing to compete at Alabama, but if you're just competing at McNeese, then it's a different story. So you have to truly dominate. You have to truly jump off the film. Best example I can think of was Khalil Mack at Buffalo. They played against Ohio State in one of these cupcakes first game of the seasons, and Khalil Mack was the best player on the field, obviously, for either team. That's the sort of thing that you're looking for. So big schools, it's a little bit easier. Smaller schools, you want to look at them against their toughest competition. You're going to rely a little bit more on the all-star games to see them in one-on-ones against, the cream of the crop of the draft, or maybe not the cream of the crop, but the players that are going to enter the NFL. And then I think that one thing that we do is Ben Herkosh. He's actually a local guy, Eagles fan. He's our small school specialist. So he's really expert at watching these players because he's done it so much. He's got a lot of reps at watching the small school guys and what a good small school player looks like versus what somebody who really jumps out at you looks like. He called me up one day this year and he said, "You got to see this Monmouth running back. This dude's fast." You know what I mean? Like things like that. So he's our specialist in that. He's our associate director of live ops, but basically in the scouting context, he's primarily focused on those players. And so when we get a report that says, "Hey, we think this guy's worth something," Ben always does the cross check to really make sure, what's the calibration there.
Khalil Mack is a tremendous example of somebody dominating against a great school, as you mentioned. When it comes to outliers like that, and who maybe, and I think Aaron Donald, because he just retired, doesn't fit the traits from a physical perspective of a normal defensive tackle. But you watch the film, and I remember saying that year, I keep trumping it because I rarely get things right, Matt, but I got Aaron Donald right. I said, he's the best thinking player in this draft, and he ends up being Aaron Donald. I got lucky on that one. But that doesn't mean the next guy his size with that athleticism is going to be that same player. How do you sort of parse out? We went through it a little bit to a lesser degree. Hassan Reddick, undersized, turns into a great pass rusher, took a while. And then the Eagles draft Nolan Smith from a big-time program, similar size. They called him at one point a baby Hassan Reddick. Still got a long way to go. Didn't play much as a rookie, but I don't like saying, "Oh, he's like Hassan Reddick," and never mind a Hall of Famer like Aaron Donald. When you have outliers like that, how do you convince people that, all right, just because this guy can do it doesn't mean anybody can do it?
I think you have to be disciplined as a scout. Mickey Loomis, one of the things that he taught us that really sticks with me and that I find myself saying to young scouts every year is if we draft a bunch of outliers, we're going to end up with a team full of outliers. And a team full of outliers has never won the Super Bowl, right? You at some point you have to it's a Parcellsian type thought. You have to make a commitment to being big, fast, and strong. And you can't just look for all of these, "Oh, this guy's fun. Oh, look at this gadget piece." You've got all condiments and no meat and potatoes on your team. So I think you got to be really careful about it. But then the other side of that is I wasn't as good as you. I saw Aaron Donald as a special player. I saw him as a first round player, but the size concerns and the lack of length, that was something that I thought, this isn't what the best defensive tackles in the league look like. And so, no, that's going to change a little bit, right? Aaron Donald changes it a little bit. Jason Kelce changes it a little bit. So we got to stay with the times. But at the same time, it tends to be that if you are going to have somebody that you want to pound the table for that lacks in one of those areas, they better be real. It's like I said with the small school guys, you got to be really good in the areas that make you great. Your special skill as a pass rusher has to be that. Your Aaron Donald, your first step has to be the Aaron Donald first step. And then you can overcome those sorts of things. But I mean, at all top of all that we're predicting how 21-year-olds are going to develop in life.
Yeah.
And it's a hard game.
All right, so let me ask you another condiment question. Turn back the clock to your days with the Saints, and Mickey Loomis calls you into his office, and Coach Payton is sitting there and go, listen, they just changed the goddamn kickoff rules in the National Football League. So we don't really know how it's going to play out. Here are the rules they explained, like you needed to explain to you. But we need you to find the guy. Who's the guy? Who's the guy who did it differently? Kickoffs just like the National Football League. Most of them flying out of the back of the end zone. But on that rare occasion when they do return one, is that the guy you want? Is a punt return guy what you want? If you were asked to give a guy from this year's draft, you go, yeah, this guy brings real added value because he's going to be our return guy. You got anybody like that heading into this year's draft?
Oh, I mentioned the Monmouth running back. I can't remember his name off the top of his head because I just see colors and numbers when I watch football.
Yeah.
But a guy like that, your guys that you have 4.3 type speed, but you actually have a little bit more substance on you. These always make the best kickoff returner types. I've always thought punt returners a harder position. Catching punts is a lot harder than catching kickoffs. And really, some guys struggle with that, and you don't want to trust them back there because it goes from trying to find a ball that could be flopping all over the place in the air to trying to return the thing right away. And you've got to have a great decision maker. With kick returns, give me somebody with a lot of size and a lot of speed that can really get downhill like that. I don't think you need to spend a high draft pick on that. I don't think there's, I wouldn't reach out and say, oh, we want to bring in a guy, especially because you talk about a little bit of injury risk associated with that sort of a thing. But so for me, it's a little bit more of a thing. You're thinking about it in a way that you probably haven't in the last few years when kickoffs basically haven't been a part of the game. But I don't think it's a huge needle mover because you can find dudes that can return kicks.
Jaden Sheridan, Matt, is the Monmouth running back. I believe you're talking about. Jaden Sheridan. 5'8", 186. So I assume he can.
Sproulsian type. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Eagles picked 50-53, I believe. Is that right, Jody? 50-53 in the second round. So right in that area. Right in that area, they need some linebackers. I mean, they signed Devin White. He's a player that didn't live up to the hype. So kind of a splashy player, but maybe not there consistently, and they only gave him $4 million. So that tells you a lot. Nakobe Dean hasn't been able to stay healthy. If I say, and you never want to draft this way, but if you say you want a linebacker somewhere in that range, who do you like? Who's a possibility that can help you immediately at off-ball linebacker?
Yeah, there are four guys that are kind of grouped together that we see as linebackers that could be at least lower end starters in the NFL. So the top guy on our board in that stack would be Junior Colson. And I think he'd be happy if he or if Cedric Gray was available at that level. Cedric Gray from Carolina. And then the other two guys, Peyton Wilson out of NC State and Trevin Wallace out of Kentucky. A little bit step behind those first two guys. But I think if we're talking about that late second round range, any of these guys that are available to you there, I'd probably have my eyes on.
All right. How about Jeremiah Trotter Jr.? Do you consider him that same type of player? Do you think he's behind those guys? He's certainly going to get a lot of attention here in Philadelphia because of the name. Does he merit second-round draft pick status?
I don't think I would be comfortable with him there. I think
Really?
that at the end of the day, Trotter is probably more of a backup special teams type NFL player. He's not his father, in my opinion. I just think what we're going to end up seeing with this player is that he's not very big and he's not very fast. It's hard for him to really be a top level player. I think he's kind of like in this range of like, oh wow, this is a really good college player. But I think in the NFL, the role's a little bit different unless there's some genetic thing that I'm not seeing that's yet to emerge.
Well, genetics are a big part of it. You mentioned Marvin Harrison Jr., number 1 on your board. I think Joe Alt was 4th. What makes those guys? A lot of people say this is a genetics league, but everybody doesn't turn. You're going to have Jerry Rice's kid coming out. He's not going to be Jerry Rice. I'm not going to put that pressure on him. But you see a lot of Patrick Surtain right now, one of the best cornerbacks in football. What is it about that, those genetics and those players, you think?
Well, I think you get the nature and the nurture, which I think it's a pretty lethal combination, right? So first of all, my parents are very far from professional athlete quality on the nature side. And so, you're starting off with that, skill set. I'm sure it's the sort of thing where Pat Surtain Sr. saw his kid on the playground at 5 years old, just, running circles around people. And it probably never changed. That's part of it. The other thing is when you have somebody who's professional like that, where you can learn the skills, where you can learn being around, right? Patrick Mahomes, for example, with his dad playing professional baseball, just being around athletes, seeing how they operate, being comfortable in those settings, having basically your worldview shaped as this is what adults do. They wake up and exercise and dominate, and then they go back to the gym and they're eating right and they're focused on all these things. Being raised in a household like that comes with its own advantages.
Matt, we appreciate you jumping on and giving us a full half hour of your time and your insight today. If people need more from Matt Manion and Sports Information Solutions, how do they best go about getting their hands on it the 3 weeks before the draft here?
Yeah, definitely the 33rdteam.com is the place to check out our whole kind of draft experience. Over 300 scouting reports put together there, along with all of our unique statistical information. If you want to know, is a guy playing more slot, or is he playing out wide, or how good is this guy at getting open in college? We try to answer some of those questions with the numbers, and that can be helpful to compare with the eye test. So check that out there. And then I'm sure you guys will have to have our scouting director, Nathan Cooper, and our King nerd, Alex Vigderman, all the good guys on Birds 355 coming soon.
I've had Alex on my CBS show. We will try and get him on here. One last question. Since your partner's now with 33rd Team, do you just take whatever Paul Domowitz says and discard it and just pay no attention to it? Damo's a friend. He's a friend of the program. Yeah. We get the.
By the way, Mike Tannenbaum had the Eagles taking Brock Bowers at 22. Tell Mike is a great guy, former Jets GM. I'm like, if Brock Bowers falls to 22, yeah, I'm taking him. I don't think that's going to happen, Matt.
Yeah, I'm not hesitating. Brock Bowers, the Brock Bowers dropping thing, as somebody who sees players more over position value and draft strategy and needs, I'm like, yeah, I want that dude on my team.
Yeah. You mentioned that the 4 guys you had at the top. How far off that is Bowers?
Oh, he's right in that second tier. So we have him number 8 overall on our board.
Yeah. If you got him at number 8 and he's there at 22, that's kind of one you can't pass on if you're the Eagles. I'll give Tannenbaum at least that much. But John and I both agree, and I think you do too. He's not falling to 22. If he does, we'll high five Mike Tannenbaum. I don't think he's getting down to 22. Matt, great stuff. Appreciate you coming on board. Thank you very much. I know how busy you're going to be the next 3 weeks. Thanks for carving out some time for us.
Thanks. It's always fun.
My
Thanks,
pleasure.
Matt.
Our pleasure. Matt Manion, VP Football Analytics from Sports Information Solutions, doing their stuff these days with 3013.com. All right, McMullen and McDonald, we got to come back and put a bow on the show. Please keep it where you've got it. But first, let me give you a chance to save yourself some pretty good money right about now. How would you like to save 40% on your car insurance? You can do it with one of JAKIB Sports' great partners. Here's what you need to do. Call one of the two managing general partners, either Fran or Jim, and tell them you're a friend of both JAKIB Sports and Birds 365.
My name is Fran Salerno, and I'm a managing director here at Del Valle Insurance Group. Been in the business for over 36 years, saving people money on their insurance needs. Give us a call. Let us help you custom design an insurance plan that meets both your needs and budget.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Mac, guys, coming down the home stretch. Thank both Matt Manion and Mike Gill for hopping on with us today. All right, John, before we exit stage left, last year in the draft, the Eagles had 7 picks. They had the extra first-round pick, which they used on Nolan Smith, second, third, fourth, didn't have a fifth, had the 6th and the 7th. So they had the 7 picks in 7 rounds. This year, as of now, they've got 8. So they've got 1 extra, but they're a little top-heavy on the back end. They've got 5 of the 8 picks are day 3. Last year's draft, how many of the 7 players they selected were brought in via top 30 visits that were here ahead of time.
Oh boy, I just looked at that. I think it was 4. I think the number was 4.
4 out of 7. So
Yeah.
slightly above 50%. Because I think that is
I know
one
they
of
brought in Steen, Sydney. Sydney was a Red Star player, as they call it. Yeah, but I think it was 4. But I'll double check that for tomorrow's show.
Do that, because that will be one of the questions I'll ask you each day for the next 2 some odd weeks. Who they bringing in? Who's their top 30 guy? Not to say, oh, then that's one of the players. Well, first of all, 8 doesn't go into 30. If you got 30 visits, you only got 8 picks. The fact that last year they had 30 visits and they only used 4 of their 7 picks on guys who visited kind of tells you something. I think that's
a lot. I would go under, and like I said, I have to double check. I know they brought in Steen and Sydney. I believe it was 4, but I'll double check. I just love Matt's description. Well, his cloud description I love, because that's kind of what I was describing with Devontae Smith, the exact same thing. And then his description of everybody coming in at the last minute, because it drives those guys crazy. I know. I tell you, they got the pristine board, then the coaches come in, then the medical people are pulling people off, then the owner comes in and he's not comfortable, and this and that, and that. It's just it's a really difficult job. And I think, it's always interesting to get that perspective from someone who's been involved in the process.
The draft board is a very fluid situation. If you don't understand that, don't comprehend that, you need to pay better attention. It is a living, breathing thing. Even till right there on your pick, you're on the clock. It can still be moving and shaking and changing. And that's what we'll be delving into for the next 3 weeks. All right, J-Mac, good show today. I say we do this again tomorrow. How about you?
Let's do it.
You're going to get Mac and Mac right back here in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.